On the Ides of March of 44 BC, the day when Rome's dictator for life, Julius Caesar, was assassinated, Queen Cleopatra VII of Egypt, Caesar's lover, and the mother of his only biological son, was residing in his luxurious villa on Tiber Island. It was not her first time in Rome. From 58 to 55 BC, the teenaged Cleopatra and her father, King Ptolemy Auletes, had lived as semi-exiled houseguests of Pompeius Magnus. Because his rule brought heavy taxation and the annexation of the island of Cyprus by Rome, Cleopatra's father, an illegitimate son of the Ptolemaic dynasty, had been run out of Egypt by the Alexandrians, who favored her older sister, Berenike IV, as queen. But after he offered bribes equaling Egypt's annual revenue to Caesar and Pompeius, the Roman Senate formally recognized Ptolemy Auletes as king of Egypt, making it safe for Cleopatra to return to Alexandria with her father, whereupon her sister, Queen Berenike IV, was executed. When her father died in 51 BC, Cleopatra was named joint ruler of Egypt alongside her younger brother and husband, Ptolemy XIII Philopator, with Rome named as the executor of his last will and testament. 2 years later, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River and Rome erupted into civil war between the forces of Caesar and those of Pompeius Magnus, a war which enveloped the whole of the Mediterranean basin. Understanding the inherited debt she owed to Pompeius Magnus, Cleopatra favored supporting the Pompeians, but her brother's advisors were more keen to please Caesar. This led to Cleopatra being driven from Alexandria as Egypt devolved in her own civil war. When Pompeius Magnus, after being defeated at the Battle of Pharsalus, had journeyed to Egypt for support, he was viciously murdered on the beach by her brother's advisors. Hoping to please Caesar, they severed the head of Pompeius Magnus, presenting it to him upon his arrival in Alexandria a few days later. But Caesar was not pleased. With her loyalty to Pompeius Magnus no longer an issue, Cleopatra quickly realized that she and Caesar were natural allies, and she contrived a meeting with the dictator in Alexandria. After spending 5 long months besieged within Alexandria's royal quarters alongside Caesar, Cleopatra's younger sister, Arsinoe, escaped the palace. Arsinoe was then proclaimed Queen of Egypt by the Alexandrians. Eventually, the Battle of the Nile River saw Caesar victorious over the armies of her brother-husband and of her sister, Queen Arsinoe, and Cleopatra was once again Queen of Egypt. After giving birth to Caesar's child, Ptolemy Caesar, in 47 BC, Cleopatra married her 12-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIV. In 46 BC, Cleopatra traveled to Rome for Caesar's triumphs, which celebrated his victories in Gaul, Egypt, Africa, and Pontus. At the end of Caesar's Egyptian triumph, her sister, Arsinoe, still a rival to the throne, was not subjected to the cruel but customary strangulation. The Roman people took pity on her and pleaded with Caesar to spare her. Caesar gave in to the Roman people and exiled Arsinoe to the Artemision, the great temple in Ephesus dedicated to the goddess Artemis. Arsinoe's protected presence there within the sanctuary of the temple was an unspoken reminder to Cleopatra to be on her best behavior in the service of Roman interests, lest she again lose her position on the throne to her sister. Just 2 days after the father of her son was assassinated, Cleopatra, along with all of Rome, learned of the agreement between Marcus Antonius, Marcus Tullius Cicero, and the Senate, granting amnesty to Caesar's murderers. And to add to her grief, just a few days after that, when Caesar's last will and testament was finally made public, she learned that the father of her child, Rome's dictator in perpetuum, had chosen to leave nothing to their son, instead choosing the grandson of one of his sisters as his heir. Caesar not only left a generous endowment for the citizens of Rome, but had also bequeathed to them the very Tiber Island gardens that had become home to Cleopatra, their son, and her politically appointed brother-husband. It would not have taken long before Cleopatra learned the whole truth. Her son was not mistakenly left out of Caesar's will because the dictator had not anticipated his untimely death. Caesar had updated his last will and testament a mere 3 months before his assassination, while Cleopatra and her son were living in his villa. But, to the Roman people and to the Senate, Cleopatra's son by Caesar was not considered a Roman. As Gaius Octavius, the heir to Caesar's name, now made his way towards Rome, gathering troops along the way, Cleopatra came to the realization that there was nothing in Rome for her, or for her son, and they and her young brother-husband made the long voyage back to Alexandria. on September 2nd of the 44 BC year, as tensions between Marcus Antonius, Gaius Octavius, and the Senate were beginning to mount in Rome, Cleopatra formally named her 3-year-old son as joint ruler. Ptolemy Caesar officially replaced Cleopatra's 15-year-old brother-husband, Ptolemy XIV, who died mysteriously after their return to Egypt. By 43 BC, Rome was once again embroiled in civil war. Gaius Cassius Longinus had claimed the 4 legions sent by Cleopatra to assist Dolabella in Laodicea, and the fleet she had sent to aid the Triumvirs had been forced to turn back to Alexandria. Now, with the battles of Philippi at their conclusion, Gaius Octavius and Marcus Antonius were the victors, while Cleopatra stood accused of helping the Liberators. From Ephesus, Marcus Antonius had written letters requesting her attendance, but Cleopatra had ignored his pleas. Finally, Quintus Dellius turned up in Alexandria, ordering her to appear before Marcus Antonius. But Cleopatra knew what the Triumvir really wanted. Rome's eastern border stood threatened by Parthia. Parthia had supported the Liberators by lending their infamous cavalry to Brutus and Cassius before the battles of Philippi. In backing the Liberators, Parthia had hoped to prevent a Caesarian takeover and the consequences of a Caesarian retaliation against Parthia for the death of Marcus Licinius Crassus. Marcus Antonius wanted to be the one to achieve Caesar's unrealized invasion of Parthia, but he could not afford it. For such an undertaking, the Triumvir, who identified as a Philhellene, needed gold, and lots of it. Cleopatra had the gold, but she wanted something in return. What meant much more than gold to her was having no other claimants to her throne. From Egypt, Cleopatra now sailed towards Cilicia. There, at the mouth of the river Cydnus, she dressed as the goddess Venus, and then boarded her royal pleasure barge, which was decked out in cloth of gold as fine as tissue, with sails made from Tyrian purple, a gilded stern, and oars of gleaming silver. As Cleopatra made her way up the Cydnus River to the city of Tarsus, where Antonius was currently residing, her barge's silver oars dipped in and out of the water in time to the leisurely thumping of drums and the harmonies of flute and harp. Reclining under a canopy of gold, Cleopatra Venus was surrounded by dimpled young boys, like cupids, who waved colorful fans to keep her cool, and lovely young ladies decked out as sea nymphs and mermaids. All along the voyage, people gathered on both shores, following after the barge and proclaiming that, for the common good of Asia, Venus had come to feast with Dionysus. In Tarsus, Marcus Antonius was sitting before his tribunal, overseeing his civic duties to the town, when the people suddenly flocked to the riverside to witness the approaching spectacle. Heading to the dock, Marcus Antonius stood captivated by the floating palace, with beautiful men and women lounging, tossing flower petals into the water, and waving at the throngs of people gathered on both sides of the river Cydnus. As the barge moored, Plutarch tells us that the scent of perfumes diffused from her vessel, misting fragrance over the multitudes. Mesmerized by Cleopatra's dramatic arrival in Tarsus, Marcus Antonius extended the Queen of Egypt an invitation to dine with him at his residence, but according to Plutarch, Cleopatra had faith in her attractions, which, having formally recommended her to Caesar and to Pompey, she did not doubt might prove yet more successful with Antony. So that she might attain what she wanted from the Philhellenic Triumvir, Cleopatra thought it more appropriate that he should dine with her aboard the barge where she had plans to show Antonius many pleasures. And so that he might please Cleopatra to gain her financial support for his invasion of Parthia, Marcus Antonius obliged with good humor and courtesy. Complying with her wishes, Antonius climbed aboard her barge. At once becoming Dionysus to her Venus, Antonius gave himself over to the hedonistic gratification awaiting him on Cleopatra's floating palace.